Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast, with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Tetzel. This podcast starts now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Peers Over Beers episode. My name is Chris Tetzel, and I'm not going to say special guest, but I do have Elizabeth Kinsey on the phone today, or on the podcast today, from Slack. Hey, Elizabeth.
Hey, Chris. How's it going? Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on, and congratulations is in. I got to tell you, congratulations. You're now got a new title and everything else, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm super excited that I got promoted. My new title is Director Community. So super excited about that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just got promoted to a few months ago. So
congratulations.
Thank you very much. And it's funny because I put it on LinkedIn, you know, how you change it. And I think 200, I wasn't counting at first. And then I posted this in one of the community Slack channels, you know, that I'm peers. I think you're the same one. It's one with Dinner 5.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I posted that and somebody goes, Chris, you have like 150 people that liked it and commented. And I was like, oh, really? So I looked, and I was like, let's see if I can get to 200. So, no, but it's cool. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that today is, you know, that titles matter in community and probably anywhere you go. I mean, we all care about titles. And, you know, I used to kind of think, oh, you know, if you just pay me more, you know, I mean, you call me whatever you want. But you know, as I've been in the space for a while, you know, you've kind of seen it grow a little bit and things like that. But what do you think about titles matter to you?
So I think I'm similar to you. For a long time, I was like, oh, it doesn't really matter, but it does matter. I think it definitely does matter. I think even thinking about your career path and sometimes the work might be similar because titles and levels are going to be different across different companies, right? And so it may be that at a tiny startup, you are the, you know, chief community officer, but
right.
At the much larger company, you're like a senior director or something like that. And so, but I do think that within the context of the company and the context of the industry, titles definitely matter, especially when you think about career progression. When I went from Branch to Slack, I went from being a director to a manager. And at the time I was like, it's the same type of work. And it's, you know, I've got more opportunities here. You know, you don't leave a job because they're going to pay you less.
Yeah.
So like it was where typically you don't anyway. So I was like, it's fine. But I definitely noticed the difference in the way that even within the industry, like the way that it was perceived. So I think titles matter for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think in our pre-show, you know, we kind of talked a little bit about, you know, when you're in front of either executives or other directors or VPs, or even, you know, sometimes when you're in front of other people from different countries, you know, they see titles, some of them is very important, like when you're in France and you even mentioned Russia and things like that. And so, you know, I was telling you a little story and I'll let you react or tell a story if you'd like. But when I was, well, just recently before I got the director title over the last year, you know, I'm in front of, you know, senior level people. I'm talking to VPs and executives and whatever about, you know, community and stuff like that. And I had this internal thing, whether or not people really thought this or not. You know, I wondered, you know, I'm just a manager, you know, are people really listening to what I'm saying? And I think they were, but it also helps, you know, you to feel at the same level as they are, right? And then there is no kind of, but you had a story about, you know, something like that, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about is like very much a power dynamic because of the language that goes after your name, which is super interesting. And so you remove that power dynamic, and there's a much better opportunity or chance for you to be able to collaborate with someone, even if it's a subconscious thing. I do definitely think that that it happens. I was telling you the story. So I worked with a guy in Russia who is a developer advocate, basically was what he did. But at the company I worked for, we called them evangelists. And he sent me a Slack message and he was like, So I think maybe like you're a very American like view of the word evangelist. Like it
Mhm.
doesn't really translate in Russia. And then one of our dev advocates who is in India, he said the same thing. He's like, so evangelist doesn't really like no one takes me seriously here. And so I think also sometimes it speaks to the sort of tech nonsense that happens with titles sometimes. Like I can't like no one wants their title to be community rock star. Like what is that going to get you in your career? Like no one wants to be community magician. Like
That's a good point.
it's,
It's the same evangelist.
cute.
Like
Right. Yeah.
I've seen somebody's title one time, chief evangelist. And I was like, what the hell is that? I don't even know what that means.
And it never, so Guy Kawasaki, who is the chief evangelist of Canva for a while, and I think he also worked at Apple, I can't remember, but I remember the first time that I saw that,
Yeah.
and I had a similar reaction because I mean, honestly, evangelicalism, like where I'm from, I'm Mormon is my background, like I grew up Mormon, and so evangelical or like evangelism, that's like
churchy.
It's exactly. So when I first saw that, I was like, is Canva what? I didn't even know what Canva was, but I like read about it in a marketing magazine. I was like, what does this guy do? Like, are they a religion? Like, and so, and it didn't, but then it became such a prevalent term in tech and especially among startups where like, if you did anything in community or developer relations for a long time, you were an evangelist. So it's like, could we not though? Could we maybe not? So
well, I mean, did you stop calling your folks evangelists or do you still call them?
We did. They became technical. I think one of them became a technical developer or technical architect. And the other one became an advocate. So developer advocate.
So, the point of this is titles do matter.
Titles do matter. Titles do matter.
And you told a good story about it, right? I like it. And something that you mentioned was kind of roles and responsibilities, or not responsibilities, but roles, and how I guess David Spinks came out with this new kind of. Which I saw that, but I didn't really get to take a look at that yet.
Yeah, so it's like a community career map, and I haven't gone too deep into it. I've just kind of skimmed over it, but it sounds like they've been using this at CMX and Bevy for the last year or so to sort of map what your career progression would look like in that community space. And it's adapted from or inspired by career paths from Holly Firestone, who is now at Venafi, who was previously at Atlassian and Salesforce. And then also Mary Thingwall, who is a huge name in DevRel, and amazing. Both of them are amazing. The first time I saw a community career path was actually from Erica Kuhl and Holly Firestone when they were both still at Salesforce. And we had reached out to them to ask them a bunch of stuff about like just building communities, because that's what you do, right? You like talk to people that have done it. And so in the course of that, I ended up seeing some of the career mapping that they had for Trailblazers and kind of what they had developed along the way. And it blew my mind at the time that like there were people out there thinking about a career path. So the fact that we've gotten from like that, which was probably 4 years ago, and now this like beautiful community career map, which I think is definitely something that I'm going to dig into and probably adapt for our team. And take, because like even just glancing at it, looking at kind of what the responsibilities are, the technical skills, like this looks like a really great resource.
And you could probably copy some of that and paste it on like hey, this is what I'm looking for.
It's a free template. Yeah, it's a free template from CMX. So everybody should. There's like a ton of people, and I'm looking at it right now. There's like 7 people on the doc right now. So I'd say it's popular.
What do you think? So I don't have any staff as of yet. I think I'm going to get one sometime early this year or late. I don't know. But as you kind of look at your staff, how important is something like, obviously that's important, right? It gives you a really good guide of how to kind of move them along the way, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at Slack, we have really great, we're pretty lucky. We've gotten very good indication around career mapping within the marketing org. And so we've kind of adapted that to community, but it's nice. This is going to be great to have things that are a little bit more specific to what it is we're doing. And I think looking forward as we build the team out, that's going to be super important, because you want to be able to create opportunities for people to grow into new roles, but that doesn't necessarily mean that like you have the idea of what all of those steps might be. And this, I think, is the type of thing that in combination with, your company's sort of career level mapping, you can make something that's really clear. And I think that that's the biggest piece around titles and career mapping. People just don't want uncertainty, right? Like when you are, a couple of years into working and you're starting to realize like, hey, maybe I do need to put boundaries in place. Hey, maybe I do need to like think about where do I want to be in 5 or 10 years, not necessarily just, can I pay the rent tomorrow? And I think that obviously that still happens. It happened in my 30s. Will I pay the rent tomorrow? But
should we dive deep into that?
Yeah, no, let's not dive deep into that. But I do think that like having an idea of where you're trying to get to gives you a lot more incentive to get there than if you're just sort of blindly like, how do I get promoted? What do I do to move up and get more money? How do I make people, give me more responsibility, take on new projects? So I think that something like this is a great tool for people that are managing community teams.
Yeah, I think that when you look at even a company like mine, and we're a small company, right? And we're kind of this startup that's just kind of taken off in a way, but the career ladder and career kind of goals and all that kind of stuff is being built today.
You're carving it out.
We're starting to build not just in community, but in all roles within the entire company, because we didn't have that. It was just like, the startups just are a bunch of people and they don't care about that HR stuff and the career ladder. But as you grow and get bigger, you start caring about it, because one, you want your people to stay, and two is, because we all want that. Like, if I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, well, how can I get a promotion? What does that mean? We all want to know what that is. And I think that community has been shortchanged for a long time, and maybe just because it's not new. Like let's quit calling it new. It's been around for like
20 something years,
but it is now just probably in the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's booming and taking off now. It's was there before, but so it was way worse then, right? When you think of career ladders, but so they have to do something, and I really think that was a great idea from CMX. Bevy, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, but to do that, because and then you want your people that are under you to feel that way. I'm sure having a team and everything else changes everything. A team of one, you're like, I just care about myself. A team of 4 or 5 or whatever you have, and as you kind of grow, they have to be able to do that as well, and grow. I mean, we all do.
I think I totally agree with you. And I think one other thing, especially right now, right? So we're in the middle of the biggest sort of my generation, the biggest shift in how people work, where they work, leaving like the great resignation, the great hiring, but whatever you want to call it, like we're in the middle of that. People are burnt out. They need change in order to see themselves in a new world of work. A lot of them are leaving the jobs that they have. This is the kind of thing that I think can help solve some of that burnout. Like not necessarily solve it, but give you a much better ladder to climb and give you, whether it's this career map or it's something that you do with your company, or you use, if you go check out Holly Firestone's blog, she's got some great thoughts on this. There are a lot of community leaders out there who have really good thoughts on this, but like the more, again, that you can be clear with people, the less tendency there can be to have that burnout, because you can here are all of the things that I should be doing within this role and build your boundaries. And like, that's a huge part of not burning out. And so, to your point, you were talking about retention of employees earlier. If you have this type of thing in place, you are much more likely to be able to keep people and to help them progress in their careers. And then when they do leave you, because no one's going to stay anywhere forever. This isn't 1950. We're not going for gold watches. Like no one's going to stay anywhere forever. Right. Like, but when they do leave you, they leave you a grown, they've had growth. They've been able to progress, and they're going to take that stuff with them to the next place. So you're, by providing this type of thing, you're setting people up for success. And then you're also like setting your reputation up for success. I don't know. So it's just rambling thoughts, but
I like that. And I have read Holly's blog a while back. And as a matter of fact, I kind of used it in some of my presentations, or at least parts of it, because it is excellent. It just kind of goes to the roles, some of the responsibilities. And she made some nice little pictures for you to look at, so it was an excellent piece.
Oh, so. Absolutely. I actually referenced it when I was talking about, when I became a senior manager, and then was going on to actually take on a team. My boss at the time, like I shared that article with her and was like, hey, this is what we want to model. Like, this is the kind of thing that we're thinking about. And I think that's the other thing. Community is booming right now, right? Yeah. It's not new, but it's booming. But there are so many executives and people in leadership who don't really know what it is people should do. So when they come to you and they're like, hey, could this be done by like a temp, or could we have like, can we hire someone on contract, or can we get, and it's like, sure, but let's really talk about what this role is. And I think this gives a good starting place for people that don't have any context. You and I have a lot of context, but like if I hand it, if you're a startup that's just about to start, you're launching a community and you want to think about this in like, what are the roles and responsibilities? This is another great framework, I think. But yeah, so
let's talk about that a little bit. Not to completely get off, but, as kind of executives think about, a community manager, for example, and bringing in somebody, the responsibilities of one person to do community is a lot. When you think of, having a strategy, building a roadmap to start a community from scratch. And then you have to think of an engagement strategy to engage them. You got to think of the goals that, you got to tie those business or your goals into the business goals, whatever those are. And then you got to think about content strategy to really so that could be Q&A, could be blogs, could be video, could be,
is it your content? Is it user generated content? Is it?
Yeah. And how do you engage the people? Because at the end of the day, you build it, they're not coming, period. You have to give a reason why. So when you think of engagement, you have that strategy of, hey, this is what we want to accomplish. So if it's case deflection, or if it's, building something kind of cool, for your people, or peer-to-peer networking, whatever, you still have to have those engagement tactics to kind of do that. What I'm getting at is, I do all that shit today, right? And on my own. So how do you kind of, say, hey, look, the Chris's in the world, which is a lot of me in the world right now from a community standpoint. And as I don't know if you heard any of Nicole Saunders stuff, but she said, you have to show the value and say, okay, if you want to double this value, then you need to hire this, that kind of stuff. But point is there's a lot of stuff. There's people in marketing just thinking content. There's people in marketing or in other areas just thinking of how do they, when you think of a CSM, how to engage those people one-on-one and that kind of stuff. But in the digital world, I'm not saying you can have less people doing this stuff, but it's still, it's still one person for me today. How did you convince, and then how did you kind of look at the roles and responsibilities to kind of say, hey, look, the Elizabeth Kinseys of the world can't just do this forever. If you want to scale, this is what you're going to have to do, engagement, blah, I don't know, whatever, does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I think so. In both of the last kind of companies, the Slack currently and the last company that I worked for, it was really about proving that value and also saying, okay, so here's where we are now. If we want to get to the next level, what do we stop doing in this bucket that has clearly been successful? If you don't want to stop doing anything in this bucket that we can measure success on, then we need to hire someone else because we have the opportunity to, increase this success. So that was like one piece of the argument of like, let's add someone in. I think the other piece, especially for where I am now, is the volume is just too much for one person. Like it's just too much.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Even if we boil it down to like one audience, there's over 1 million developers developing on Slack. So if it was just developers, so I'm going to be 1 million. My total addressable market would be 1 million people, me, one person. Sure, I have the power of the marketing team behind me and I can work cross-functionally with other people, but yes, I'm still not going to work 12-hour days, and I'm not going to.
And that's not enough.
Exactly. It's like I would never get anything done. And so saying, okay, these are being really specific about, these are the programs we want to run. This is the time that needs to be invested in them to be successful. So if we have 4 of those things that we want to do, there is one of me. We need to pick which one's the most important, or we need to hire to it. Yeah. And I think that was probably, especially like with getting the first role in at Slack, was a big opening door. And then it's honestly like after that first role, it kind of becomes easier to prove value because you can then say, hey, yeah, look, we hired someone and look how much better things got. And so you can continue to kind of layer that on. I think the other thing is that I have definitely been the one person who has done everything, everything, the marketing, write the copy, write the tweets, write the, create the images, make the banners, order the swag, get the pizza. Like I've done all of the things, right? Yeah. Mine the database, clean the records, put it imports and exports, do the marketing operations. I definitely think that is the way, like when it gets to a certain volume, everything tries to be a priority, and then nothing is priority. And so when you get to that point, you got to be like, hey, we need someone else too, if we want to continue at the level of craft and that we are now. Or make sacrifices. What are we going to cut? And I have always tried to be really clear with my managers about my workload. And I think that's an important thing, like to be able to define what is the max that you can take on, and then be really diligent about sticking to that, because that's, I think, what the hardest thing is, because it's easy to draw boundaries and it's easy to walk over them. So you gotta prevent yourself from walking over it.
Yeah, it's so good. Like, I'm so glad you're on this because you've just got so much knowledge to share. It's funny because right before this, I was, so I do these things, I call them the Reltio community shows. They're just deep dives into the product. It's kind of complex, and about every week, we do one. Well, we lost our social media person, which used to put kind of the intros on my videos, that I push out into Vidyard, into YouTube and everything else. And he would do all that. And then he also promoted them through these kind of cards, and so all I did was did the show. Now I've got to do it all. Like right here, I had to do 2 of them. I was like, all right, I got to cut this thing and then put this in here. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Like I don't have time to sit here, and it's important work, but man, I just can't, I don't have the time to sit there and spend on that. I have another job too that is on the executive council, so I've got to run that. How am I going to do that and this community at the same time? So it's just, and so I think you're right, and it's not the problem though, Elizabeth, is that it's hard one for us to kind of do that, right? Like we do all these things, and then we've got to communicate it, and it's left to us to. I'm not mad about it, but it is left to us to communicate in a really good way of what we're doing and what we shouldn't do. I love what you said. I think it's highly important. But other roles, like in the marketing roles or in the customer org, their roles are defined. They already know what they should go do and don't do. So why do we have to continue to prove that out and say that? It's frustrating, but it is what it is. We got to talk about it. We've got to push it out there. Sorry, Chris, nobody's going to feel sorry for you.
Well, I mean, I think this is where tools like this come in really helpful.
Yeah.
I will tell you though. So my first marketing job was roughly, let's see, like 2007-ish. The first kind of real marketing job that I had. And there's no respect. It was like just the worst. Everybody crapped all over marketing. There was two of us. We did like a ridiculous amount of stuff for the size of company that we were. I mean, thinking back, I'm like, wow, I said yes to a lot of stuff that I would not say yes to today. And that's just, progress and growth. But it took that same role now that I have, or that I had then, or a very similar role. Like those are different subject matter roles. And I think something similar is happening with community. And it also has to do with like the size of the company, right? So like if you are at a small startup and you are in demand gen, you're probably doing everything.
Yeah.
And so right. I think it also has somewhat to do with that. But as you get bigger and you need more specialization, those roles are already defined. And I think that this is something that, and that's just over the last, especially in the like kind of digital and tech and like online world, a lot of those roles are only 15, 20 years old, right? Like when I had my second marketing job, do we have an SEO manager? No, I just used Google AdWords and was like, how's this shit work? Like it wasn't, like it was, but now there are people whose whole jobs are that.
It's Google AdWords.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I think
they don't know anything about SEO. They just do Google AdWords.
Exactly. And their titles matter. They matter so much.
Their titles matter. No, look, in going back to that, their titles matter. That's kind of where this is going, right? Like is to a specialized specific community type role. So you get I haven't looked at his, but the assumption is you've got kind of this associate role, then you have community manager, and then you have senior community manager, then director, et cetera. But then you can even have kind of on the side here, engagement type community manager. You can have an operations type community manager, and then all this shit, that you can do just in community that people want. People want data. Today I'm the data guy. I'm the storyteller. I'm the content strategist. I'm the engagement strategist. I'm fucking everything. You know what I mean? And so, but you put somebody that is, specifically on those particular roles, just think, you're right. I mean, I'm at a smaller company. We're growing like crazy. And hopefully over time that changes. But at the same time,
it sounds like you need someone on your team, Chris. What it sounds like to me. It sounds like you need to work on that pitch.
Yeah, I got to work on that. Well, I think it's coming, but I'm not the most political guy, Elizabeth. So it's I don't get the best words to say all the time. I just say I need somebody, and prove it, Chris. Fill out all the spreadsheet shit that all these other people have done before that I haven't done. So that's another thing I gotta figure out how to do.
Yep.
What I mean?
It's like the overhead of doing all the overhead.
No, it's just interesting.
Though.
No, it is. I get very passionate about certain subjects, and maybe it's because, I'm going through some of that today, but the stuff that you're like, it helps me. So I'm glad that you came on today just for that. One, it helps me vent, but it is more so of, this is how you go solve that problem, Chris, that, and I think that's important. And so roles, titles, money, whatever, it all matters, at the end of the day. And, and I think brands matter too. I don't know why I just said that, but I think it's highly important. Like you want to work for a company that has either a good brand, a good reputation, that, I just talked to somebody the other day that, they hate their job, and they want to quit, and they just, it has a bad culture and everything else. And so, if you can find a company that really has a great culture, but like you said, of like Slack has a really good culture of hiring from within or moving you up and all these kinds of things. And so that sounds pretty awesome to me, and so I don't know.
Yeah, you want that good culture. I agree, brands matter, and I agree where you work matters. I think something that I always think about is who am I making money for? Because I don't own this company. Like if I have shares, sure, I'm making myself money, but like really, who am I making money for? And does that align with who I am as a person? And I think that that's a luxury. It's a luxury to be able to consider that. It's a privilege to be, and so I want to call that out. Like I feel privileged to be able to consider that, because that was not a consideration that I could have thought about, 4 or 5 jobs ago, where that was I didn't have the luxury of being able to think that way. You know, it was like, no, I just need a job. And so I think that like, like I think that when I just need a job that pays well, that has health insurance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is like a whole other thing. But like, we
so going back to your 30s,
box.
did you want to go on that?
Yeah.
Topic?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I do think that like I do think that, ultimately that does matter. So I lost my train of thought there, but
that's okay. It started making me think about, so the other day I was posting something on Twitter. I think it's something about you. It was like, I say the other day, a couple of weeks ago. And then I looked at your Twitter account and I saw you karaoke, and I was like, oh my God, that's Elizabeth. She karaoke's like on Twitch.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I was like, I got to listen to this.
Oh God, I'm so sorry. No one should listen to it. It's terrible.
It's a public, so it is. I knew it was fine for me to say it because it's all public. So
absolutely. No, it started. That's a fun thing. That's a pandemic development. We're not the same people we were at the start 2 years ago. But I was definitely a karaoke person, but you couldn't go to karaoke at the start of during the pandemic, at the height of the beginning. And so Twitch actually had a product called Twitch Sings. And I'll bring this back to community because I can do that. So Twitch Sings was great. You could get on and you could like sing a bunch of different songs. You would earn stars and points, and you could duet with random strangers, and it developed this whole Twitch Sings community. And so I met a bunch of other weirdos like me, and we just would Twitch Sings, and they killed it. Awesome. They killed it. I know, it's terrible. So they killed it at the beginning of 2021.
It's the worst time to do it.
Everyone so all these communities like migrated. There's like discords around people that were like Twitch Sings famous. I was not, trust me, I was not. But there were there were all these different communities that sprung up from it, which was really cool. But they stopped doing it probably because of DMCA stuff and takedown notices and all of the copyright stuff that happens with music. And they probably just were like, this is a headache. We don't want to deal with it anymore. Yeah. But then it left this void. What are you going to do? It's still a pandemic. So I'm not going to go and do the most dangerous activity that you could possibly do during a pandemic, singing indoors.
And who wants to put a mask on doing it? It's just, it's difficult.
It just ruins it all. And so I started just streaming random karaoke on Friday nights and still get to hang out with some of the people in the community. So that's fun. But
that is cool. The folks that really love karaoke are the Koreans. So when you go to like hang out with them, they just want to go do a ton of karaoke, and it's a lot of fun. I don't do it a lot, but there's just like this whole culture of let's go to karaoke.
My biggest pre-pandemic regret, we so at Slack, the DevRel team before the pandemic did these tours where we would go to different parts of the world and do a bunch of meetups and show off a bunch of the stuff for the products. And I decided, I don't need to go on the APAC tour. I'll go on the next one. It'll be fine. This was like November of 2019. It's like, no, I don't need to go to, Seoul and Tokyo, and I don't need to go to Singapore. So during that, all the DevRel team that did go to all of those places, they are like sending me pictures of karaoke every time they went. And I'm like, I really would, FOMO, really wish I went. And then the pandemic happened, and now I'm like full. That's like one of my biggest regrets. Like definitely should have just go. Bit the bullet. I was coming off I had a bunch of travel. There was like a bunch of community events happening, and I was like, I'm just going to travel for those. I'll stay in the US. I had like family getting married. I was like, it's going to be so hard to coordinate. It's too much. Yeah. I totally should have just lived through all that crap and like it's just gone. And then I can tell you how great karaoke in Korea is. But
that's crazy. Well, I hear it's awesome. I remember during kind of that time as I was working at Imperva, and the nice thing is I get to travel all over the world. I went to Israel a couple of times. I went to Belfast, and of course California, whatever. But then I had a trip booked for Singapore, and then I had another trip booked for another Israeli trip, and another Belfast, and then my wife and I were going to go to South Africa, and she was going to do this run thing or whatever, and it's all booked. Everything. like literally started in February. That's when it started. It was, basically, and I had to cancel it all. Like I couldn't believe it. And thousands upon thousands of dollars.
Oh.
Like, I mean, it was terrible. And so, the positive is that, I get to do some of that beforehand, but, and I left that company and came here at Reltio because I do think that, bringing this back to community, building relationships, not just here in the US, but all over the world, and having beers with people, literally beers, we're not having a beer today, but, having beers, building those relationships, just having pizza, whatever, karaokeing with people, that you do business or you work with, and even customers, of course, but this is important. And so it's been a transition for me over this last, I don't know, 3 years, seems like two and a half, whatever, but I'm sure you've kind of dealt with that same thing. So
yeah, definitely. The oh my God, I haven't gotten on a plane every 2 weeks for 2 years is real. One of my coworkers was like, I'm getting on a plane. He's so excited. I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous. I've gone a couple places, but it's not the same.
Same. I mean, I think I've traveled work-wise twice last year. And that's it. Twice. That's it. Like I traveled twice. And so it's kind of crazy. Well, Elizabeth, I think it's a great topic around your role matters, your title matters, and then going a little bit deeper into different roles and responsibilities within community. And I really enjoyed this Peers Over Beer. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a super fun conversation.
Yeah, it was. Well, thanks everyone for another Peers Over Beers. My name is Chris Detzel, and we had Elizabeth Kinsey on the phone from Slack, and she did get a promotion, Director of Community. So congratulations.
Thanks, friend.
All right. Bye-bye.